Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we are going to talk about Denis Villeneuve's phenomenal Dune Part 2, and what it means for Dungeons and Dragons. So let's talk about, okay, and specifically, we're going to talk about Denis Villeneuve making the knife fight, right? The forged steel knife of the Emperor against the hewn Chris knife of Paul Muad'Dib Atreides. This phenomenal, one of the best knife fights ever put in any film ever. At the end of Dune Part 2, by the way, spoilers for Dune Part 2 here, where Paul Atreides fights Feyd Rautha with a knife fight, right? The Emperor's steel knife against Paul Atreides' Chris knife, and the fight is short. And what this means for Dungeons and Dragons combat going forward. Okay. All right. So first of all, I want to make it super clear: Dungeons and Dragons will never be the same after Dune Part 2. Okay. The film, Timothée Chalamet's, Zendaya's, Javier Bardem's, Josh Brolin's, Denis Villeneuve's amazing, Frank Herbert's amazing film, which finally successfully adapted the book of Dune, which was considered to be completely impossible. A Dune adaptation was widely regarded as an impossible task because Hollywood failed to do it for literally 4 decades. Oh, I'm sorry. It literally failed for close to 6 decades. Close to 6 decades, right? The failure to adapt Dune lasted literally as long as Dungeons and Dragons has been alive, okay? But, so why does Dune Part 2 change Dungeons and Dragons forever? Well, Dungeons and Dragons is fundamentally, powerfully impacted by the most iconic genre IP of the day, always. First, it was Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings, and this is no longer debatable, Lord of the Rings was literally the genesis of the Dungeons and Dragons intellectual property. How do we know this? Because we've been told by Hasbro that they're giving us the first edition unchanged of Dungeons and Dragons, which literally includes Tolkien estate, loader property. It's right in there. Like, it's not debatable that Lord of the Rings was the genesis of American fantasy, Dungeons and Dragons fantasy. They're printing it this year, in my own opinion, right? It's not really debatable any longer. And then, in 1974, D&D was like, woo! We all about we all about Lord of the Rings, right? 1977 comes, woo! We all about Star Wars, right? 1985 comes, woo! We all about Star Trek. 2024 comes, woo! And actually, no, let's back it up. 2022 comes, woo! We're all about Harry Potter. Woo! We all about Dune. Dungeons and Dragons always carries the most iconic genre intellectual property with it, right? And you could see these fingerprints. And I think Dune has changed the face of Dungeons and Dragons forever. So let's get into it. So what does every Dungeon Master and every Dragon Master get from Dune 2? Cut combat by 9/10. Combat cannot last ever for more than 15 minutes in any Dungeons and Dragons game, ever. Now, I do this today. I'm already here. You guys are way behind, right? I've accomplished this because I'm able to run one hour Dungeons and Dragons. I use that by using visual prompts with Lego, and I do that by using page 4 of the Dungeon Master Guide. The rules aren't in charge, you are. And so I make every single combat I ever run in every campaign, in every session, never exceed 15 minutes, right? And I make a lot of changes to Dungeons & Dragons to do that. I'm fully authorized to do that by the DMG. And if you're running Dungeons & Dragons raw, rules as written, you don't even know what Dungeons & Dragons is. Dungeons & Dragons, your Dungeons & Dragons isn't even Dungeons & Dragons until you've changed it, right? And what Denis Villeneuve proves for every Dungeon Master and every Dragon Master is this is literally the final scene that you get for Dune to finish the Dune book and to complete the holy grail of Hollywood, an adapted Dune movie, right? Like, it took 2 movies to do it, but the entire book of Dune has been adapted, right? Successfully, massively successfully. And he did it with a super short combat. And by the way, I didn't think about it. I watched Dune. I've seen Dune 4 times now. I'm queued up to see it a 5th time soon. And basically, it was really interesting that we really arrived at this. We arrived at this through a reviewer actually said, "Hey, did you guys notice how fast this fight was?" And in any Transformer movie, this scene literally would have been 35 minutes long, right? Most action films, the final, it's a beat now, right? Like, an American action film, the last action scene is literally 30 minutes long, right? Transformers movies, they can go 45 minutes long. It's incredible, right? Of non-stop action, right? But they were like, no, you don't need that, right? You can have a super impactful, literally campaign-ending fight that lasts 5 minutes, and it can be meaningful. I love this, and I think this is the most powerful thing that Dune brings to Dungeons & Dragons today. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion, not a thing more and not a thing less. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.